let's talk harassment. It's just not one of my favorite topics, but you can't run away from the fact that harassment is in the workplace. And you might think that everything's perfectly fine, but when it isn't fine, are you comfortable with the decisions you're making in terms of how you're handling it? You're listening to the Human Resource. And one of the questions that came on in this past month was an organization that is I would call them a very professional organization. They have highly skilled, highly educated individuals who consult and support other very sophisticated organizations. And they've got a retention on their roster it's just very impressive. These people, they don't burn and churn their workforce. They're individuals who've been with the company for quite a while. And their circumstance was a bit troubling this past month in that one of their individuals on a client site, well, I don't know how to simplify this, decided to share racial jokes. And it's very obvious when a joke is racially disgusting. I don't know how else to say it. I'm just going to voice my personal opinion on this. And the individual was, talking among other people like himself, and an individual walked up, approached him and said, "Hey, what are you guys laughing about?" And that individual happened to be of a different race. And yet this employee said, "Oh, hey, we're talking about these jokes." And he openly shares, thinking that this new individual who's just approached them is going to laugh and think they're cute. And so what do you think happened? And so this company that called me said, this guy's been with us for years. He knew better. We've trained on harassment and discrimination issues. I mean, they had proof of it too. They actually had the training logs. They said, "Look, we've talked about this. This was a personal choice that he made to deviate from our policy, and now our client's upset." And as one of the owners and one of their directors, continued to tell me the story, I finally, when I listened to all the details, I finally said, well, what does your gut tell you? How much damage do we have here? And they both looked at me and shook their head and they said, "Yeah, this could not be, this couldn't be worse." I said, "Okay." And I'm always trying to explain to my clients, so I'll share with any of you that call, or I try to share here on the show, look, everything can be quantified. And in this particular situation, I just asked the company, I said, "Look, if you lose this client because of this bad decision and bad behavior, how much is that going to cost you? If you, obviously they're going to remove him from the site, how much is it going to cost you to train somebody else to take that spot? How long is it going to take those individuals to get all the historical background and learn the culture of your client and be able to get up to speed?" Put a cost to that. Put a cost on what this just did to your brand, because there's a good chance your customer is going to go talk to somebody else in the industry about what you allowed or what your employee did. And the question of, how effective was your training? You could put a cost to that. And as I'm saying all this, I could just see their eyes, just not glazing over, but it was pretty sad that they realized, oh, this is far worse than we thought. And why I think this is important to share with you, listeners and viewers, is how many times do we allow certain behaviors to to just slip between the cracks, or we look at our employees and go, well, that's not appropriate, or come on, guys, let's get back to work. Ladies, really, there's a time and a place. When in fact, all that is doing is enabling. And harassment is not something we can afford as companies to enable. Now, granted, there are different levels of severity. There are different levels of, I'll just say, ignorance, lack of emotional intelligence. But there's also the whole thought process of, look, did this individual, and I asked the company, I said, look, when you approached this individual, did he admit to doing it? And they both looked at me and said, yeah, he did. And he thought it was funny. I probably shouldn't have done it. In retrospect, it probably wasn't in good taste. And if you've been listening to the shows, you know that I value humility greatly. And when somebody's kind of chuckling to themselves going, yeah, you weren't there. It was really funny if you'd been there. That's not humility. That's not somebody that's looking at me and saying, oh, wow, I really messed up. That deserves an apology. I wasn't thinking that'll never happen again. And again, once you realize just how all of the badness and the negativity that incident, that split second of bad decision has just compounded, what do you do with that? Well, the EEOC says that by law, you are not required to terminate somebody just because you identify that harassment is taking place and you know who the perpetrator is. Once you have that information, you've done your investigation, that's where the EEOC allows you to exercise your discretion on how you handle harassment. And their recommendation is that you have to keep in mind the goals. Number one is to stop the harassment. You got to stop it. Don't enable it. Don't walk away and emotionally deny it, because it's not going to go away that way, and you're just going to dig your hole even deeper. But your second goal is to prevent it in the future. So if you're trying to stop it and then you're trying to prevent it, and you think that the individual actually could be taught humility, or we can turn this guy around, or we can turn her opinions about these kind of activities differently, then absolutely, informal counseling, a written warning, mandatory harassment training is a must. Maybe it's a suspension with pay. Say, look, I need you to go home and think about this. We're not playing games. I'm never going to have a customer call me and tell me this ever again, especially from you. You absolutely have that ability. But let me challenge you one more. What if it's one of your managers? What if it's one of your supervisors who can't appropriately, handle himself around young women or certain individuals that are different than him? What if it's one of your female managers who can't control her emotions? And either sex can do that, but you know what I'm trying to say, that they just, whether it's bullying or whether it's gossiping, they just can't control themselves. They can't get out of their own way. What do you do with them? Okay, well, let's start with, what would Pandy do? Let me tell you something. Pandy would tell you, get them out of that supervisory role, demote them where they cannot hurt themselves if you're going to keep them. Otherwise, get them out of your building. That is not the culture you want to have. in that you have employees being supervised by a bully or by someone who intimidates or retaliates, don't put yourself through it. You have options. So my advice on this particular episode is, look, when harassment comes and you're faced with a decision, do exercise your discretion. Take all the facts in play. Ask all the questions. Quantify it. How much is this going to cost us if we keep this person? And how much is it going to cost us if we let them go? Consult with your labor law attorney or get a hold of your consultant. Call me. Run it by me like this company did. But don't walk away from it. Deal with it. I'll give you all the tools. I'll make sure you have the support you need, but deal with it. Okay. There you go. We talked about harassment. And by the way, that company handled it beautifully. Beautifully. Thank you for listening to The Human Resource. Take care.